Okay, we left off the other day on the flexible layouts. Today we're moving on to the next chapter, and we're going to be looking at web fonts. Web fonts. Let me share this with you all. Can everyone see my screen? Yes? Okay. So we're going to be looking at web fonts, and the question is, what is a web font? Web fonts are essentially they're fonts that are stored on your hosting server, and through CSS they're linked so that they're pulled down to the person's whoever may be viewing your web page. They're pulled down and then referenced through CSS to display those fonts. Web fonts are made possible to the @FontFace CSS rule. And that allows the CSS to link to the font on the server for use on the web page. Now, there are 4 different types of web fonts. You have the embedded open type, and this is only supported by IE8 and earlier. As I was reviewing this, the book was written back in 2016, so it's about 4 years old, our textbook. And honestly, I think most folks are off of IE8 now, and they're all the way on Edge, and the new version of Edge is actually using Chrome as its engine. So I don't think you really need to worry about the embedded open type. However, if you are in an organization where IE8 for some reason is the supported platform, then you'll need to be aware of that. The other type is true type fonts and open type fonts. These are your TTF and your OTF. Both of these are actually the types of fonts that are stored on the stored as applications on your computer. All browsers support this, IE9 and later, as well as Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, Android, iOS, all of those should support it. And then, of course, we have the web open font format. The first time I saw this, I didn't have my glasses on. This was several years ago, and I looked at it and I thought, what is a wolf font? WOOF, WOF. All browsers support it, and of course we're going to be looking at this one a lot today and how to use it. The other type of web font that you can use is a SVG file. These are scalable vector graphics. I don't recommend using these. These were the favorite at the beginning when web fonts started, but it's not appropriate to use them anymore unless you want your computer or the host computer to crash. And we don't want that. They won't come back to your site if you do that. All right, a couple of things to keep in mind. Legal issues. Fonts are technically pieces of software, okay? They're pieces of code that folks have spent a long time working on. They're artistic efforts. That's what they're typically defined as, is an artistic effort. And these fonts, they try to emulate down to as clear as they can, okay? They're trying to emulate a particular artistic design. And so web fonts, if you didn't buy the license for them, or if you don't have a license set up to use a web service for these fonts, then don't use them, okay? All right, so there's a couple of ways you can get web fonts. You can purchase them, but the question is the web font you purchase going to be compatible? You can typically take a TTF or an OTF, and you can go out to this site here that I've linked for you. It's fontsquirrel.com, tools, web font generator. And they'll take the TTF or the open TF, and they'll convert them to a WOOF. Again, this is converting someone else's code into this other format. This tool will convert it, and it's really great for that. All right, some things you need to think about though as well is the font file size and whether you want to subset the font. Font file size, you have to be prudent with this. If the font that you choose to use is large, it will slow down your user's download speed, making the page painfully slow to use, unless they've already have that particular web font on their in their server's cache or their hard drive's cache. By the way the cache works, we haven't talked about this very much. When you load your web page, every picture, every piece of JavaScript, CSS, every media file, including these web fonts, all of the assets are downloaded to a temp directory on your computer. Whether or not you clear your cache or not, those files are there on your hard drive. And the reason they're put there is the next time you visit that site again, it will allow it to just open very quickly, very rapidly, instead of re-downloading everything. Now, that's nice, but at the same time, if people are in a habit of clearing their cache, not just their history, but clearing their cache, it can make their site or your site slower to load. The other thing you can do with these web fonts, if you're only going to be using them just for a particular, like just the all caps, or you're only going to be using a certain number of characters, you can subset. You don't have to have all of the thousands of characters that are potentially available. Subsetting is a way to trim down the size of the font that you're going to use for your page. Just keep in mind that once you subset it, if you try to use characters that are not available in the subset that you create, obviously it won't work. In fact, the remaining text on your page will cascade down to the next font in your font family. All right, so where do you find the fonts? We have two options for storing fonts. You can self-host them, and we're going to be demonstrating today how to self-host fonts, as well as you can use a web font service. Web font services have become extremely popular, and both of these methodologies are very valid. They're perfectly valid for doing. Sometimes the fonts, however, will only be available through a font service. But if you're going to self-host, then you can store the font on your site just like any other asset, your CSS images or media files, videos, whatever, and you can reference them there through your CSS. If you're hosting through a font web service, a font service, usually what you do is you purchase a subscription and you're able to access the fonts that are available through the subscription. This is actually kind of nice because if you don't want to buy fonts and you want to have a large set of fonts that you can have access to at any time, you can subscribe on an annual basis to a large set of fonts. Now, this of course would only make sense if your business model is set where you're going to be a business that's up and running for a long time. If you buy or if you put a subscription to a font service, you need to make sure that you tell your customer that you're including this font service as part of their support package for their website, because it's you want to keep things plain and open for who your customers are and what they're using and what they're getting. If you come back, you build them a site, it's a one-time deal, but you use a font service and then you let your font service go down, you're still going to be on the hook for fixing the code, even though it was a one-time fee. So make sure you think about whether or not you want to download the font, buy it, and make that part of the cost of giving it to your customer, or if you're you want to use a font service. Font services are nice if you're doing this for an employer. You can include this in the cost estimate, the annual estimate, what it'll take to continue to maintain that website. And of course, they may say, no, we don't want to do that. We just want to buy the font we're going to use and move on. But it all depends. All depends what your business model is and what you're trying to do. The way these work, you typically have to download either some CSS or a JavaScript file and put it on your server. And the CSS and JavaScript will have some type of byte encoded, UTF byte encoded piece of code that will be validated, and it'll validate the subscription and so forth. If you don't have the code on there, then you try to use the font and it'll just fail. It'll fail for you. All right. As I said, many developers prefer this approach because it's cheaper, it's easier to use, you get access to a large quantity of fonts. All right, here are some typical font services that you can use. Now you'll notice that there are two in this set that are free. That is Edge Web Fonts and the Google Fonts. Both of these are free. And a lot of we'll get into these other CSS libraries that you can use later on, but a lot of these CSS libraries use, built into their styling guides, they use these free web fonts, either the Edge web font or the Google fonts. These others, the Typography Cloud, Font Deck, Fonts.com, FontSpring, these are all very popular. In fact, you can go out and buy fonts from them, or you can use their subscription for using their font service. The other nice thing with fonts is these fonts you can buy. Some are even actually designed for icons. There's a whole set of social media fonts that you can buy, and they're stylized so that, say for example, you type F, you use the social media font, it'll use a Facebook icon. And the nice thing about those types of icons is you can size them, you can set the color for them, you can style them, you can set the weight. They're all set to use the standard font properties that you might find interesting. We're going to go out here in a little bit and actually look at Squirrel's, let's see, fontsquirrel.com, and you can see some fonts, and you can actually search for some social media fonts to be used. All right, any questions so far? Everyone's good? Well, that depends. I've been kind of a freebie kind of person, and usually everyone that I talk to, like my bosses, they're like, no, just do the standard free stuff. So we've either stuck with the Web Edge font or the Google fonts. If we had to have some specialized font feature, we might use an SVG, like I told you not to use. But if we had to have something special, then we've used that from time to time. But, yeah, I mean, Martin, here's the question for you. It depends, like if you're going to start up a business and what type of support package you're going to give to your customers for websites that you run. You very well could log in, get a web hosting account, and you could do what I have done, host multiple websites for different people. And then you just give them a yearly subscription fee, and that subscription fee covers whatever you'd like to use. You could go that route. But it all depends on what your business model is. But they're fairly easy to look up to. You can find out all of this. All right, let's jump ahead here. So the @font face declaration block is a little bit different than other selectors. Why? Well, it's not a selector. It looks like a selector, but it's not a selector. It's actually called a font face rule. However, everything inside its declaration block for the rule is very similar to what you would apply for with other properties. There are specific properties that you can only use for the font face rule, but in general, the rest of it's laid out very similar to the way your CSS is constructed. Now, I snagged off of the W3 Schools down here a table that demonstrates what types of font formats are supported. So you have in Internet Explorer 9 and above is the TTF and OTF. WAF is 9.0 and above. The WAF 2 is 14.0, which I believe is, excuse me, I have the hiccups, which is your Microsoft Edge. And then, of course, SVG is not supported, and the EOT fonts, they were only supported from 6.0 and below. And you'll notice that EOT is not supported by anyone else. Same thing for SVG, except SVG is supported only at 3.2. All right, so all of your other browsers, your mainstream browsers like Opera, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Explorer, or Edge, they all support the WAF or the WAF2 fonts. They also support the TrueType fonts. So when we go in a few minutes and we walk through the demo of how you download a font, we'll be actually selecting these three, the TTF, OTF, the WAF, and the WAF2. Okay. When you're using the font face rule, the one thing that you will have to do is you'll define the first property in it. You'll define a font name, and that'll be for the font family. And that font family property name you'll put in single quotes, and you'll call it whatever name that you want it to be represented or callable by the CSS on the page. Okay. We'll get into that in a little bit more in a moment. All right, so this is the range of your font face properties, font face rule properties. You have font family. We just talked about that. This one is required. You can't declare a font family without actually specifying. You can't declare a font face without specifying a font family. The name needs to be in single quotes. I believe you can put it in double quotes, but the standard we're all using is single quotes. And inside that single quote, you'll put the name that you want to be used. It needs to be unique. Remember the way CSS works is that it cascades. And so if you don't make it unique and you create another font face rule with a font family with the same exact name, you're just going to override it. So you need to make sure it's unique. The source property, this is required, and it's going to use the typical URL path, like what you would use for a background image. You'd use the URL parentheses inside single quotes. The key here again is making sure the path to the file where the font face or the fonts are stored. I store my web fonts in their own folder, right? And some people will even take it a step further and they'll create an asset folder called web fonts. And inside the web fonts, they'll have a folder with the name of a particular web font as another folder. And inside of that folder, they'll have all of the fonts, whether they're WAF, WAF2, TTF, or OTF. So keep in mind that when you're specifying the path that you always use the // because your CSS is in the CSS directory, right? So // web font or whatever the name of the path is to where those fonts are stored. The following properties, these are all optional. So you can specify a font stretch. Font stretch takes a predefined set of values which are normal, condensed, ultra condensed, extra condensed. I feel like I'm baking here. Semi-condensed, expandable, semi-expandable, extra expandable, and ultra expandable. That was a joke if anyone uses condensed milk. That was... Anyways. This is optional, but again, the font stretch property, it's used to let the letters be able to be stretched out, right? That's what this is doing. And then you have the font style property. So this is optional, again, but you can make it normal, italic, and oblique. Font weight, optional again. Normal, bold, or you can use the typical 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, all the way up to 900. Those are the typical values you can use. And then the last one is a little bit interesting. We haven't talked about Unicode yet. I don't know, have we talked about Unicode or ASCII in this class yet? No? Okay. I may try to bring up a typical ASCII table and a Unicode table. Omar, I know you're familiar with that, right? He's probably tired of me picking on him because I always say Omar was in the Java class. And, the Unicode range, let me explain it like this. When computers were first developed in the US, they weren't really thinking about other cultures or other languages. They were just thinking about how do we communicate between Berkeley and San Diego or something like that, different universities. And so when the first internet connection was actually formed and the first HTML pages were put together, when the first programs were written, they used what was called an ASCII character set. ASCII character set. And there's only like 128 characters in that character set. They include characters that are used for a space, for a new line, for a breakpoint, for tabs. They include your standard set of numbers. Oh, they also include like the escape key, the backspace key. Let's see. There's some other control keys on your keyboards if you look down. All of these ASCII characters are related to those particular keys. And then you get to your numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And then from there you start with A, B, C, D, all the way up through Z. And then you do it again in caps. And then you had commas and periods, right? All right, so the ASCII character set. There's only 128 of them. But when the web started growing, people realized we have to make this thing more expressible, because even in Spanish, there's these like little tilde symbols, right? Over letters, or the little squiggly over an N, right? All of those little specialized symbols. And so they expanded it and expanded it and expanded it. And then they came up with what was called the Unicode range. And the Unicode range takes up something like 64,000 different, actually I think it's like 64 million. It's a huge, obtuse number. It defines, the Unicode range defines what your font will support. So the idea is you could specify a Unicode range and say it will support from this number through this number. Now you don't have to do that, it's optional, but if your web font doesn't include all of the possible Unicode characters, well, it won't work, right? If your web font doesn't include Japanese characters, it won't work. There's all of the standard Japanese characters and Chinese characters, Korean characters, Arabic symbols, all of them, they all exist in the Unicode range. In fact, they even have, I believe they have ancient character sets within the Unicode range, which is pretty cool. All right, so that's Unicode. Any questions so far before we go on? Remember font face, source, font stretch, font style, font weight, Unicode range. The two that are required though to make this work is font face and source. And you'll probably use font style and font weight, but you may use font stretch from time to time. But all right, let's go on. Here's a typical example of how the font face rule is laid out. Notice that I have the at font face open declaration block with the curly brackets, right? Inside of it, I specify my font face properties. Here, this is from the textbook actually. Font family, colon, single quotes, PT underscore sans regular, right? And they say sans regular because that's just the name of the font. It's actually PTS55F. I don't know what that is, right? But they specify this to be as semantically correct for what these properties represent. So sans regular, sans means none of the serif, right? It's just sans. Or is it the other way? Anyways, yeah. All right, well, we'll get into this a little bit more. It's late in the afternoon for me, and I need to have another cup of coffee, I think. All right, so just he's making the name as expressive as possible. All right, and then there's a source URL for the web font, and then there's a source URL web font EOT. Right, both of these are EOTs, and they're using an IE fix, and then format embedded open type. Now, in this right here, this is kind of like a query string, sort of. But this is the path where this font exists. Same as we see here. URL, quote, where this font exists. All right, then they have comma, URL. They're using the WAF font. Format is of WAF. And then again, comma, URL. This is a TTF font. And they're saying the format is true type. Then you get down to something that makes more sense. They're saying the font weight is going to be normal and the font style will be normal, right? Pay attention to the path though, where the web font is stored. Go ahead and look at the next example here. In this example, they say PT sans italic, right? But they're not specifying italic. I think maybe, is that a different font? No, we'll come back. We'll come back to this. All right. Let's go ahead and at this point, go ahead and download a font. So go to www.fontsquirrel.com www.fontsquirrel.com, and I'm going to go to that site now. And we have some various fonts that we could download. Okay. We have one here. Let's see. You'll notice that there's a little question mark. Do y'all see the little question mark as I hover over these? If you click on it with the question marks, this commercial desktop use, this free license allows you to create commercial graphics and documents. The globe, which is used for webs, is free license for web use. These smaller ones, this license does not allow ebook or portable document embedding. And the even smaller one talks about you can't embed this in applications or software. So these fonts are free, but they're only free right now for, let's see, for creating, so you could download the font, put it on your computer, and install it and use it as, for creating graphic arts, right? Or you could use it as a web font using the font face. So I'm going to go down here and let's see. I'm going to, oh, this one's not available. That would look like a cool one. Let's see. I want something that's different. Find one that's really different. I'm going to do this Riffic. Okay. So this one is free for font face for web embedding. So click on the download TTTF. And this is taking me off site, so it's going to take me to another site. And I want to go down to the free one because I don't want to pay $50 for the font, do I? That's ridiculous. All right. So notice that this one is bold, but you also have a light, you have a book, medium, so forth, right? So this is something you need to pay attention to when you're getting your fonts, because this font, if we click on it, it's only going to support just the bold text. Okay. All right, so I'm going to click on this one for buying options. You're going to have to create an account at this point. I've already created an account for this site. As you can see, I'm logged in right here. Creating an account is very easy. So all you want to do is click on, let's see, add the web font. And what do those do? Oh, so it's free. You might want to check those if you're going to use these for something else. All right, so you've selected in cart. Click your view cart. And we are done. So I'm going to check out. And I am ready now to download my web font. So I'm going to download the font here. And notice that it's taking me back to this squirrel. I've talked about this before. Squirrel will basically convert the TTF into the web font, and that's what we want. So I want to generate the web font, and then I can specify what subset. So I could say I only want Chamorro or Greek, right? These are all the different fonts this guy has created for this thing. So I'm just going to do the Western Latin, which covers just about everything we're going to do. And then we're going to click on Standard. And I want to make sure I select the true type, the WOOF, and the WOFF2. I'm not going to do EOT, compressed, or SVG because we're not going to use any of those. Yes? Download order. Let me go back just in case you got... if you download PDF, I'm not sure what that'll do. Go scroll down a little bit and you'll see download below. Do you see that? Was that Martin who was talking to me? Okay. Yeah, I'm down here on this download button here. All right, so you click that, go into generate web fonts, click on standard, make sure you got the true type selected and the WOF and the WOF W2. We're using the basic subsetting right? We could do some custom subsetting, and you could specify that there, or you could say no subsetting. We're just going to stick with basic for right now, because again, keep in mind that subsetting, what it allows you to do is shrink the size of the font, right? So that your site doesn't take forever to load. All right, so we're going to download our kit. And it is processing it. Looks like it's almost done generating. Now it's downloading. All right. I'm going to open this in Finder, and I'm going to drag my WebKit font that I just downloaded. I'm going to go to my NMC folder, and I'm going to go into the flexible width, and I'm going to drop it right there. Did y'all see that? So I'm inside NMC, CSS222. I got my flexible width folder. This was the sample code we were looking at last week. We created on the fly. All right. With Finder, I can just double click on it, and it will expand it out into a bigger folder. And now this folder is set here at the root level of CSS images. It's on the same level as index. Now, one of the things I want to do, though, I really don't like this long name, so I'm going to rename the file, and I'm going to do that. But I'm going to put a dash and call it Rific, because I want to be able to look at the folder instead of having to drill into it and know what it is. And then the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a folder and call it Web Fonts. And I'm going to drop my folder inside of that one. There we go. All right, so if you expand it, you're going to see several artifacts that have been created for you. There is a style sheet, which actually has the font face styles set up in it. There is a config test, and there is this demo HTML. So let's go ahead and click on the demo HTML. It threw it up in another window. Give me a second here. There we go. And this is the Rific Bold. This is the demo HTML that it created. And you can see it is going from a size 10 all the way up to a 90. There's Rific Bold. There's Arial, Verdana, Georgia, right? And it's giving you some examples of what it looks like. All right. Layout. This is how it would look in layout. Because it's only a bold font, there's not a lot of expressibility here, right? What kind of glyphs does it have? Well, here's a glyph chart. Right? And it gives you this nifty little thing on how to install your web font. Notice it already has font face, my web font, all of these files, right? It even tells you how to link to the style sheet where this is going to be at and how to use it. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into Atom. What I have open right now, let's see. I've got my sample flexible width application we created from last week, right? And this is not using any media queries. It's just a simple, flexible, responsive page. All right. What is the first thing we have to do? Well, we're going to go up here to the top. We're going to say at font face. Okay. And then we're going to specify the font family. And my font family name, let's see, is what? It's Rific. So single quotes, Rific. Then I need to point at the location where this font is stored. So the way we're going to do that, give me a second here. My page. All right, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to start off with our source, colon, and we're going to use the URL. Now, if you remember before, I mentioned that you have to pay attention to the path of where you're at. Looks like I got an extra @ symbol there. All right, I'm going to use single quotes. I'm in, right now, the CSS folder, but I want to go all the way down into this folder. So I have to go up one directory. Then I want to specify web font kit, web fonts, right? Now I'm in that directory. Then I want to specify the web font kit Rific directory. Now I want to point at the Rific web font WAF file. So I'll say Rific -bold -web font .waf, right? And that alone right there should be sufficient for specifying, okay? So I'm going to let you know though, if I come over here and I try to refresh, notice the font hasn't changed. Well, why hasn't it changed? Because right in here, I need to specify my font. I have to put it at the front of my my font family. So now I'm saying my font family is going to use Rific. So I'll refresh it, and it automatically has picked up that font family. Now, because this is an all bold font, it kind of leaves me feeling like, ugh, I don't really like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of right there, and I'm just going to say H1 font family Rific. So that all the other text is normal, but my header is using that bold font. Okay, does everyone see what I've done? Okay. So there's an easier way to do this as well, because they give you the font. They give you the style sheet for this. So if you'll double click on your style sheet, you're going to see that you have the typical style sheet font family, font face rule already specified for you. It's been generated. So you're going to copy this and then go back up to your CSS. We're going to just take that out, paste this in, hit save, and refresh the page, and it should work, right? Why didn't it work? What do you guys think? Yeah, but I have H1 specified as RIFIC, right? So think about, again, what did I miss here? I just took right out of this style sheet, copied it, and I pasted it into my style sheet over here. Why didn't it work? Think about what happened. What are we missing? Basically what we're seeing is that it can't find the font. So why wouldn't it not find the font? Have I given it the right direction? There you go. There you go. I haven't given it specific enough directions. Remember, so I have to go up one directory out of the style sheet. I have to specify my folder for web fonts and then the specific web font that I'm using. Web font kit, RIFIC, right? Now if I save that and do this here again, it probably will work. Nope, didn't work. Let's make sure I did this right. Web font kit, web fonts, web font kit, RIFIC. Okay, so we have to go ahead and specify it for our WAF and for our TTF. So now we'll refresh it. Oh, there you go. You see what I missed? The font family name that we pasted in is different. So we got to paste it down here. There we go. All right, pretty easy, right? Pretty easy. All right, let's go back out again to the site, and let's find a different font. I'm going to choose a sans serif font, and you guys can pick any font you want, okay? But let's just kind of go through the process again, make sure we all understand how to do this. I kind of like this one here, this Paralucent. Oh, it's $29. Ugh. Where's the free price? There you go, free. I like that better. That one's kind of a weird one. I don't know if I like that. This one has 6 styles for free. That looks like that might be a good one to use. Mesmerize. I'm going to do something different. Let's see. Font, script. No, those are boring. Let's do display. There we go. And I want free. I'm going to do this one. Okay. Astron Boy. Yeah. So I'm going to select that one, buying options. Oh, maybe I can't. The web font license for that won't let me. Okay, back to the drawing board. Let's do a slab serif and see what we get. Price. All right, I'm just going to go with this one so we can move forward. Download the family. $300 for the web font. Whew. Oh, that's hurting me. I need to find one that was free. Let's see. We went to, where did we go earlier? Do you remember? We were at this site. And all right, I'm going to use this one right here because this one has the web font available, the Questa. Okay, so there's the font. Looks good. Download Questa from FontSpring. Looking for the free one. Where's the free one at? There it is. So we're going to add the web font. View the cart. That's good. Checkout. Has everyone found a web font that you can download? It's kind of important that you do this because you're gonna have to demonstrate that you can use a web font in your project. So you're going to generate the web font now and include the true type. Download the kit. Of course, you can see it's preparing it. All right. I'm going to open this in Finder and do what I did just a minute ago. Go into my flexible whatever. Drop it in my web fonts folder. Double click it. All right, so there is my web font, and this is called Questa. So I'm going to rename my folder. Okay, and if we look at this one, includes specimen files, some extra CSS. Let's see. Here's the demo HTML. And there it is. Okay, so that's good. Let's go back into our site. Go into Atom. Create a new font face rule at font face. The font family is Questa. The source is ... up one directory, web fonts, web font kit Questa, and they got some long names here. Bring this out a little bit, make it easier. So it's called 2 Questa regular web font dot wolf 2. Our format is WOF 2. Going to do the comma, and let's go down a line. Let's make this easy on myself. Copy all of that. And we're going to do dot WOF format WOF again, another comma, and you're going to paste all of that in there again because I don't like to type. And this one is our TTF. Specify the format. True type. All right. Go ahead and add in here the font weight is normal and the font style is normal. Looks like I misspelled it. There we go. So now I've specified this font face of Questa. So I'm going to go down now to my font family inside of my body. Put Questa in there. I have my H1 still set to Terrific Bold. So we should be good to go. So I'll save it and I'll refresh. And there we go. It's changed to the Questa font. Okay. So far, it's pretty basic how to do this. We're going to get into in a little bit how to use the Google web fonts in a moment. But let's go ahead and jump back to our presentation for a bit. So let's review some of the properties here. So in this example, the web font face font family name has been specified as PT Sans. You can see that the source specifies a URL of PTSFF8 web font EOT, right? This is one of those web fonts we don't use anymore. But here's the thing I want you to keep in mind. Notice the path. This web font actually exists at what level on the hosting server or in your project? Same level as what though? Yeah, so this will be on the same level as the CSS, right? And that's okay too. If you want to put your web fonts inside your CSS folder, you can. But just keep in mind that the more expansive your site becomes, you may want to separate things out into their appropriate containers, right? Do any of you guys like organizing things? You dream about organizing at home at night, making sure everything has its place. And I'm joking with you. Obviously, I can tell most of you are like, I throw my clothes on the floor. If for your website, so don't throw your clothes on the floor, okay? Make sure you organize things appropriately. Put it in its appropriate spot. It will be such a blessing to you later. You look back on it and go, man, I am so glad everything has a place, because I'm going to tell you, you're not going to remember. 6 months from now, you'll come back to a website you've created and you go, where's all the stuff at again? How do I find, where did I put everything, right? You want to make sure you put everything in logical places. That makes sense. All right, so the PT Sans is the font name, and of course they can reference it now in the body with font family as the first font using PT Sans, all in quotes because it matches, right? Whoops, let me go back. Yeah. So notice that the font family property, it lists the web font in single quotes, right? It's very important. Make sure you remember that. Styling your web fonts. Now this can get tricky because for each style you have to have a separate font face for it. Okay? You have to have a separate font face for the styles that you create. It's very important. So here we have the font style italic. We have it all set, but we have to create a different font family rule, font face rule for that. Let's see. We've pretty much covered this pretty well. And now we're also looking at other font styles you could use. So in this example, let me jump out of that for a second. I'm going to capture that link. Actually, let's just do this. We're going to open up a new link. We're going to go to Google Web Fonts with your search engine. And it should bring you to this site, Google Fonts, or fonts.google. And these are all, you've probably seen these before because all of these fonts are sponsored by Google. Okay. There is a fairly long list of available fonts that you can use. And you can see from my scroll bar here, we could scroll for a long, long way. And yeah, that's a lot. Here's an example though. Does anyone read? I think this is Korean. Isn't this Korean? Anyone read Korean? Yeah. So you have all types of fonts that you can use. Okay. I think that's Vietnamese, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah. Here you go. It looks like some, maybe that's Thai. I think it's Thai. Anyways, you can even have barcode fonts, right? Which is actually pretty cool if you think about it, because you could write your barcodes on your website. Okay, huge list of web fonts that Google has. All right, so what we're going to do, scroll all the way back up here again. I'm going to, let's see, just going to select Roboto for a second. And let's see, they got, these are the glyphs they have. Your about, who the designer was, your license. Anytime you see the Apache license, it means it's free to use. You just can't try to resell this font. That's what it protects. Okay. And then they actually demonstrate popular pairings, which is nice. I like the way that Google does this. They demonstrate the pairings that will work with this font. So they're pairing Roboto with Open Sans, or Nato Sans or Lato, right? All right, so we'll go up here. You'll notice here in the right corner you have download the family, and it automatically sent the file to the download. I'm just going to unzip it real quick so we can take a look inside. And there are all the fonts. You could actually install those right on your computer. But what I'm actually interested in is the web fonts. So let's say Google web font. Where are you at? Here it is. Getting started with your fonts API. Okay. So you're going to specify the for the font API, the way this works is they're going to give you a style sheet via this query. So if I copy that query and I paste it into another window, it's going to generate that CSS. Does everyone see that? And inside the CSS, it tells you where those fonts are at. And you'll notice it even specifies the Unicode range, which is nice. All right. So the way the Google Fonts API works is you copy the link. So this is the Tangerine. And I'm going to go over to my CSS, let's see, over to my index HTML, paste it right in there at the top. I'm going to go into my style, and instead of Cuesta, I'm going to use Tangerine. And just like that, now I'm using a font service. So we'll refresh it, and the question is whether or not we're using Tangerine. So let's see. Tangerine is like that. Did I spell it wrong? And of course they're using a serif for that. Okay, so let's take a gander here. And look at the network. This is very helpful when you're trying to see what's happening. Okay. So if I saved everything, oh, I didn't save it, that's why. So there's Tangerine. Everyone see how I did that? So there is the Google API, CSS. This is what you call a query string. From everything you see after this question mark right here in the last part, some web services will specify this as a query string, and this is using a get method and querying basically on family by the name of Tangerine. It sounds like to me that you could probably access a lot more than just Tangerine using that query. So, yep, you can use any font name you want there. So let's try that one. Inconsolata. So we'll change that out. And if I go to look at this CSS, and the reason I'm going to do that is so I can see what the font family name they've specified, right? Because that's important. If I don't find out what that is, then even though I have Tangerine specified here, it's not going to load it. So I want to make sure I get the right one, Inconsolata. Now if I refresh it, there you go. I get this interesting script, right? This is using the Google Font API. This is what you call a font service. Any questions on how to use the font service? No? Okay. There's other things in this tool, the site. I recommend you go through it, read through the Get Started, all of the different types of fonts that are available. I'm actually kind of curious here because, let's see. A minute ago, we were on the fonts.google site. So I'm curious about this. What if we pass in Roboto into our query over here? Look at that. It may very well be that you can specify the type of font off of this site. I'm off topic right now completely. I'm just totally geeking out here over this, but let's just see what it does. Roboto. We'll save it. Come over here to the font family in our body. Roboto. Save it. And refresh. Yep. Cool beans. All right, you guys see how I did that, right? This is a query string, and so if you supply it a valid Google font, it's going to pull in all of the fonts that are necessary for that Google font. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Any questions so far about how I've done this? Okay. Let's go ahead and jump back to our slides one more time. And that is actually our last slide. So we are done with the lecture part for today. Go ahead and open up your Moodle Classroom. And we'll take a look at the assignment that we had specified, that you guys have. Excuse me. So we're on week 7 right now. We're looking at homework 11. And go ahead and download the zip. I'm going to take the zip and just move it on over into my NMC folder. Let's see. Okay. We'll open that. I'm going to close all these out and open up the homework 13. There's a doc and a close all this so we don't confuse anything. So we have an assignment dealing with web fonts. Okay. We will go ahead and open this file. So our CSS, homework 13, and we'll open the web fonts file. And here is the site. So we're going to have to style this with our web fonts. All right. Go ahead and open up that Word document that's there. Let me close some of this out. And the directions of this tell us that we need to unzip our folder, unzip our file. We need to modify the Chapter 13 web font CSS and make the web fonts HTML file look like the following. We cannot modify the HTML. Cannot modify the HTML. So we're going to modify the, look at number 2 and number 3 here. So refer to the font face rule on pages 360 and 363 in your textbook, right? And add the League Gothic Regular and Crimson Roman. Now I have no idea if you have those fonts. So they're saying that these are in the folder. Ah, there they are. Okay, so there's the League Gothic and the Crimson. So we need to add these, and let's go ahead and look at how we're going to do that. Okay. So we're going to go to our CSS folder. And we have our standard standard CSS in here. Excuse me. So we're going to add our first font face rule. We're going to specify the font family, and we're going to add the League Gothic Regular and Crimson Roman font faces. All right. So we'll specify a League Gothic Regular. And then we need to specify the source. And we're going to do a URL. And again, think of the path where we're at. So single quotes, need to go up one directory and then down into the web font directory, and then down into the League Gothic directory, and then we actually need to specify the font. So let's start from the top and go to the bottom. We're going to go League Gothic web font.eot format EOT do a comma, do another URL, and I don't like typing, so I'm going to copy all of that to right there. And this one is going to be our TT, let's see, this one's going to be our WAF. I hope everyone's following along, because although I am recording this, I've had problems lately with the recordings coming through, so please make sure that you're following along. Web font. I'm not going to make you use the SVG because we don't use it anyways. So don't worry about the SVG in this, okay? All right. Format. True type. And our font weight is normal. Font style is normal. Okay. Let's go ahead and create one for the next set. So we'll do at font, do the font face, font family, and this one is going to be the crimson, just call it crimson. All right. I'm going to copy and paste these because it just saves a little bit of time here. So we're doing crimson, Roman. See, these are dashes, aren't they? Crimson Roman EOT. So just copy these, paste that in, paste that in. That has our, this is our crimson, actually this is crimson Roman, right? So we'll say crimson Roman. And this was our regular, but I'm going to leave it just as it is. All right, now I'm going to put a comment up here, and this is Crimson, Roman, regular. This one's going to be crimson, Roman, italic. And I'll go ahead and create another comment. Crimson, Roman, bold. All right. Save ourselves some time. We're just going to copy and paste this in there, okay? So crimson, Roman, and we're going to take out the Roman and put italic, italic, italic. Okay. Bold, bold, bold. All right. So remember, we're ignoring the SVG for right now. All right, so we've got our font families in there. We want the font family for the header, the H2 element. It should be set to League Gothic Regular. So H2 is League Gothic Regular. So here's our H2 font family. League Gothic Regular. I'm going to save it and pull up our website real quick, refresh it, and inspect it, because make sure we're seeing what we're supposed to be seeing. All right, web font. So it's not finding it. Why is it not finding it? Web font. League Gothic. League underscore. That's why. This is where we have to pay attention to what they've got typed here. So these are dashes. If you look over here, it's underscore between League and Gothic, and it's a dash between Gothic and web font. Okay? So we got to make sure those line up. All right, so if I saved it, yes I have. Go ahead and refresh. All right, so it changed those fonts. Does everyone see that? It did that. So let's go back now to our Word document. And the font family for the body should be Crimson Roman. So we'll come in here. Font family. It should be Crimson Roman. And let's see, where'd my web page go again? Refresh it. And we got an error as well. So what's the error? Crimson-bold-web font. What did I do? Y'all see what I did? Right here. That's where I goofed up. Copy and pasting will get you every time. All right, so change that. And just carry that on down. Make sure I'm only changing the crimson, not the Gothic League. All right, here's crimson. Save that, refresh it, and now we have something, but I don't think this is right. So let's just go back real quick to our Word document. It should be all lowercase. And this is because our last one is font bold, right? So what am I missing? Make sure I did this right. I'm not paying attention. Bold. And this is italic. And that's normal. Okay. That cover it all? I believe it did. Okay. So refresh it. Uh-oh. Did I not save? There we go. All right, go back to the Word doc one more time. And then, of course, you need to compress all of that and save your files and so forth. All right. That is the homework assignment for this. So we've changed the header. We've changed the menu items and the body, and we've also changed the H2s to use the different web fonts.